Okay, calling the meeting to order. Need the roll call.
Ms. Douglas, Mr. Hamilton,
Here.
Ms. Headland,
Here.
Mr. Jacobson,
Here.
Ms. Metkovsky, Mr. Morrison,
Here.
Ms. Salmon,
Here.
Ms. Waller.
And I believe we have a quorum, correct? Yeah, okay, any changes to the agenda?
No.
Okay. Next, we'll move to approval of minutes of the previous meeting. Did anybody have any changes? I think you do.
Minor under adjournment, it's Ms. Morrison. I would just change the S to an R perhaps, but
Perhaps.
that's all. Minor.
Okay.
Definitely.
Okay, would someone like to move to approve?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Okay, I don't believe we have any public input, so let's move on to communications. We're going to have an Urbana Arts Grants presentation from Elizabeth Simpson.
Good to see everybody.
Aye.
Is her
I'm
mic-
Elizabeth Simpson, and I'm here to do a presentation about the Urbana Art and Schools Grant, which is a grant that was given out last year. It is an outgrowth of a previous public arts project, was the Celebrating the Champion People's History Project, which generated a number of different posters that were celebrating local events and people. The main thing, I just figured I'd pull one thing out of the proposal. The main thrust of this in terms of civic engagement was to encourage active creative community participation in celebrating our community, which is exactly what the original celebration Urbana Champaign History Project was about. But instead of being about history, it's about the contemporary moment, being able to engage with our community as it is now and see that it is a beautiful, creative place. The main pieces that I'll talk about is that we had ongoing publicity and web presence. We had a stencil workshop, scavenger hunt, an ongoing call for participation and submissions to our digital photo archive. Then we had a gallery show at the Common Ground Food Block, and then we were part of the Boneyard Arts Festival. As usual, we have a website that was adapted over from the initial project. Of course, we always include the Urbana Arts Grants program as part of our publicity. We did releases. I speak in the royal we. I'm a facilitator. I was speaking we. Me and some other people. Then as part of the Midwest Zine Fest, we had a stencil workshop, which had a number of direct participants, but then because it was an ongoing event, there were a lot of conference participants who were around, interested, asking questions. There was, as you can see, young people and older people involved, making stencils in that. Then we had a digital photo scavenger hunt where we invited people to go around town, and there was this little form that they could use as an idea if they couldn't think of their own. This was what someone's submission was for a Wise Camp, who was the winner of it. This is Laura. She won some posters from the poster project, and also one of the photos is going to be is part of the main visual archive for the postcards that were made for the possibilities. Then there was a gallery show with a call for participation. The call for participation actually went out right after the scavenger hunt, which was late spring, early summer last year, continued all the way through April this year. So just inviting people mainly to take photos of, there's 3 categories because I wanted to be as inclusive as possible, advocating for people who don't consider themselves artists. So it was take a photo of street art, like graffiti or posters up or public sculptures, or it was take an artistic photo of something that you can see from the street. Or it was take a photo that you would just say it is artistic. There's kind of limited categories, but I think a lot of people. In last September through November, we had a big display in the Common Ground Arts Gallery, which really publicized the call for participation, really activated it. We got a lot of responses. There were also a lot of postcards that went out about that. And then it closed out with a gallery showing in November where a lot of people came, probably 70 people, again, really activated around the project. Then this past spring, we were part of the Boneyard Arts Festival. We were in the Boneyard Guide. And then we had a lot of posters around town. Seen them. All of them were hand screen posters that were done at a Wise Camp. We had a screen printing workshop at Wise Camp that was also open for people to picture all these posters and put them around town. People were really excited about the posters themselves. Business owners wanted to have like, it's really nice, so that's fun. But it's all good of street art. And then we received over 600 photo submissions.
Wow.
In the grant report, I miscounted. I had more than one folder. I said there was over 250, but there's way more than that. I didn't want to take a lot of time, but I wanted to kind of skim through to give you a visual representation of the types of submissions that we got. They came from students, they came from elders, they came from young people, all over the place. So I'll just spruce through. You can see some of them are, outdoors, straight up, this is art, this is my favorite. Some of it's of street art, definitely, or murals. This is outside of Carl. I thought this was pretty amazing, right outside the emergency room.
I'll be darned. Yeah.
Snowboard. Random poster in the co-op. Yeah, make it look as neat.
I like it.
And I had special help from Jeff Putney, Alec and Miller Jones, who helped with digital advice. I'm not a visual photographer. They helped a lot with that. Also, Maya Bauer and Common Crew Club were fabulous with the gathering. And previous collaborators, Resident Printing and Disney Graphics, were, again, extremely helpful in this process. This is just a recap. This is everything. And thank you so much, Lisa. It was so fun to look through the photos again all the time.
Great. Anybody have comments or questions?
I was about to look, but let me ask you, do you have the photos posted on the website?
I hit a glitch in terms of the way that you can post photos online. You have to pay a lot of money for storage, or you have to, it's proprietary. People get thrown ads at them, or they have to sign up. So I'm trying to figure out a way to do it for free, but they're not up yet. But that's a goal.
Maybe a Picasa account?
It seems like it might work. There was a little bit of a glitch around the way that they navigate your ID and different information.
Okay.
Surveillance culture. But absolutely, we want to make sure. And they're also going to be up on UPTV as slides, a selection. There's 20 that are postcards, and then I'm going to just, over the next couple months, just keep giving UPTV another set every month.
Ah, great.
Keep rotating through.
Very good. Yeah, Ginny.
And the postcards in here? They're not yet, but they'll be available now that Waterway Link's closed. We'll see where they can go. Basically, just like the poster project, it's just a recovery process. Any money that comes in just goes to the next round of printing.
I mean, are they available then?
Not yet.
Yeah, okay.
Do you have a oh, sorry. Do you have a Facebook page for the project?
Celebrate Urbana, Champaign People's History.
Can't you make a photo album and put it on the Facebook page and then refer people to that URL?
It could be. Yeah, I actually don't know enough about Facebook, again, with the way that they track people. That was a complaint we got from a lot of people concerned about Facebook owns everything you post on it.
Well, that's true.
And so all these, the way we're gonna do it, or with me and my 4 people who are helping, is to, on one hand, just like the history project, we wanna celebrate people's efforts, but not make it so that, well, there's certain heroes and I can't be like them. So the way that responsibility for the photos will be distributed is there'll be a list of contributors, there'll be a list of photos, and that way no one has to feel good or bad about, my photo is here, isn't here, oh, they were special, I could never do that. Oh, of course their photo's in there because they're a professional photographer, blah, blah, blah.
It seems like some of those photos would serve really well for the promotion of the arts programs here. So hopefully in digital form, if they could make their way to Lisa, they could show up and be credited as needed.
The
Yeah.
ones that are here, you've got,
Well, I would say both the arts program, but also, we are doing all sorts of things with tourism through our own efforts in the Urbana Business Association and the city website. So, these are really, I think there could be a multiple promotion, because if these can turn up on the city website, on on websites that are promoting travel here, and each link would give a credit to your
Mhm.
program
Sure.
as being the source of the image, because these were very, very striking.
Aren't
Well,
they
I'm
great?
not telling you anything you don't know.
No, but it's great. I mean, it's great. And I've had this dream to make postcards for Urbana for about 8 years because I love Urbana. And it's awesome. And you walk around. Just walking over here, I again saw another piece of street art, little pieces. I walked by a statue on campus of a woman kind of crouched, and someone had put a purple velvet glove over her hand. There's all these little ways that we contribute to our aesthetics in the community, making it ours. And so sometimes just taking a photo of it helps us realize, oh yeah, I do see that beautiful thing every day. Oh yeah, it is all around me. Yeah.
Well, be sure to let Lisa know when you do get the photos posted.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay,
great.
well, thanks
Thank
very
you so
much.
much for your time. I appreciate it and your good work.
And let me know, because I'll make a point of directing the city council
Great.
to them.
Okay, our next Urbana Arts Grants presentation will be from Maria Lux.
Do you know how I get my disc out?
It's a nice upgrade to the original version. Getting there. Look at that.
Oh, here's an ejector now. Okay, great. Thanks so much.
Hello.
Hi.
Get my presentation up here for you. Okay. My name's Maria. Just a quick background for you. I moved here to get my MFA in studio art and finished my degree in 2012. It's my long-term goal to teach at the university level, and I know that part of being a good candidate for those kind of positions is to have a really active exhibition schedule. And right now I work between 4 and 6 jobs to support myself, so financial support is really important for me at this stage in my career in order to be able to keep making work. Not only to just make work, but to be able to live in a community that I really like and not to have to feel like I need to move to some city somewhere in order to chase down resources. So I really want to thank you for making that possible for me to do. And I want to show you where your grant dollars were spent. So the project that I did was called Magnify, and it was kind of a multi-part thing, and I'll explain how that happened. But first I'll show you what the final project looked like. This is a installation piece that's in the storefront window at Art Coop in Lincoln Square Mall. It went up at the end of May, and it'll be up throughout the rest of the summer and maybe the beginning of the school year. So if you haven't seen it, you can stop by. So I won't talk too much about the content of the piece because there's a lot of things going on in there, but I will say that it's about these little microscopic animals called water bears and amateur contributions to science and public scientific literacy and those kind of ideas. And so my original grant proposal, I asked for some funding to help find some studio space because my apartment is pretty small and I wanted to do something ambitious, and I wanted to rent space at CoLab downtown Urbana. And before I even got a chance to talk to them, the owners of Norden German Design, who you may be familiar with, they have their offices at CoLab, and they approached me about doing a short-term pop-up studio residency in their window. So I thought that would be perfect to do with this project. So what I did was I got to occupy their window for a couple of weeks, use it as my studio, and then I was available to the public to walk by whenever I was working and take a look, and then during certain open studio hours I could talk to people. That was great for me. I really missed talking through ideas while I was working on them, and working alone in my apartment doesn't really allow for that. So I had great conversations with lots of people. There were 2 festivals that happened during the time that I was in the window, so lots of people stopped by, way more than I was expecting, and actually helped shape the outcome of the project by their thoughts and ideas. So I wanted to acknowledge that Norden also, in addition to donating their space, they donated some of their design help and time to make me posters there, so that was really great. And kind of my end of the deal was that I needed to host a reception, so part of the money went to paying for food and drinks for that reception. You can see some images of that event right there. That was surprisingly successful to me, too. I didn't expect so many people to show up, and one of the really great unexpected benefits for me was that I was visited by someone who works at Beckman Institute who happens to work in the microscopy suite. And he said, I see you're working with these water barriers. We don't have any now, but if I can find some, would you be interested in coming to Beckman and looking at them under the microscopes and taking photographs for your work? And I was thrilled about this. Because that's kind of the ideal outcome for all my projects, is hoping that I'll get to interact with experts and learn something from them. So that was a really fruitful experience, and I'll tell you kind of how that turned out a little bit later. But first I want to talk specifically about some of the advertising things, because that was an important part of the funds that I used. Normally I don't allocate any money for advertising because it's like the first thing that goes when you don't have a big budget. But since other people were supporting this, I wanted to make sure to get the word out. So what I decided to do was respond to the experience of a pop-up artist with pop-up cards. So these cards, I'll show you, there's some of the process of them. I used some money for printing, laser cutting, and paper costs to make a whole bunch of these little pop-up cards. And then on the day of the opening, I posted on Facebook that the first 30 or so people to come to the opening would get one of these cards, and then the opportunity to get a 20% off discount at Art Coop, thanks to the owners. So what they did is you draw a little paper microscope slide when you walked in, and then you could look at it under the microscope and see if you could find one of these little microscopic animals, and if you did, then you could bring the card to Art Coop and get a discount. That was surprisingly fun, too. I think it gave people something to do with the opening. People seemed really excited about it, and a lot of people showed up even before the opening to try to get one, so it was kind of cool. They did take a lot of time, but it was fun. And then I'll just touch on, most of the other advertising that I did was through social media, so we did a lot of posting on Facebook as like regular updates of the progress of the project and little teasers and that sort of thing. And luckily I got to use Art Coop's base, which is like a couple thousand followers, and then Norden and CoLab's pages too, so I think the word got out pretty well, and people would ask me about things they saw on there, so I know they were paying attention. So after I was done in the CoLab space, I moved my operations over to Art Coop, and then I kind of worked under a veil of secrecy for a week or two in the window, and then peeled off the paper in the middle of the night, so that was really kind of exciting. And then unveiled the work at another opening. And so a lot of the major actual material costs came into play at this point. That backdrop you see on the left is actually 2 10-foot strips of canvas that was printed, so that was actually pretty pricey. And all of that furniture I bought, and a lot of other printing. There's a lot of text in this piece, and a lot of things were printed for that. So another thing I also spent some funds on was getting the work photographed professionally, so that I have a record, so you have a record, and all of that. So there's a few details. The upper right is a diorama that was on the left there, and it had a whole bunch of little tiny things in there. So. And then I had a final opening reception that actually had the finished piece in it, and here's some images from that. It was catered by Piatto in the mall as well, so that was great. And the real highlight for me was the special guest that I got to have at the reception, which is live water bears. So a couple days before the opening, my friend at Beckman called me and said, they've arrived, I think they're alive, come see them. So I spent an afternoon at Beckman getting this tour of all the amazing equipment, and he prepared some samples for me. We looked at them under the scanning electron microscope. It was really cool. So I got some images to share with people at the opening, and then he said, do you just want to take them with you? I'll give you a microscope, and you can show people living examples. So that was really fun, and again, gave people something to do at the opening that's a little different than usual. So there's images of people enjoying those. And here's a couple of the scanning electron microscope images that I got to take, so you can get a sense of how weird and cool they are. And the one on the right, some of the Beckman folks took of a living one. The ones on the left are sadly not living. But there you go. So like I said, it'll be up for a few more months, so if you get a chance to stop by and see it. And I'm happy to answer questions about specifics or whatever as well. I want to say thank you again for your financial support, and for all the support of all the groups in this community that make it possible to make work. The engaged viewers that actually show up to things, the groups at Norden and Art Coop and other local establishments that give us space and opportunities to make work, and definitely for the funding. So thank you.
Great. Any comments? Go ahead.
Do water bears live in and around the boneyard?
Probably. They live in moss, basically anywhere, and I know they found a new species on a roof in Bloomington not that long ago. We tried to find them here, like locally, before before we ordered them from a supplier, but they were a little hard. I mean, you have to sort through a lot of moss, and it was taking a long time. So.
Right. Wow. So I guess I'm just wondering if there, you know, in the future, I mean, building on this, there might be some, if, you know, somebody, are you in the community for a while?
I think so.
I think it would be cool to build on the foundation to have some sort of combined art and natural history thing in the Boneyard Park itself. I have no idea what shape that would take. And I bet that if you can't find them in the Boneyard, that they could probably be planted there and thrive because
Give
they
us another tornado.
they live. I was just, I didn't know anything about them, but while you were talking, I was browsing a little bit, and they seem to live in a tremendous variety of environments, and I can't imagine that they wouldn't live around here.
Well, if you'll remember, the sides of the boneyard are actually going to have a little, I don't think it's this animal, but
No,
it's a
different.
similar kind of thing, decorating the walls.
Yeah,
They're
those
in the
are,
soil.
yeah, those guys are arthropods, but the
Yeah.
water bears are, well, they're special, actually.
Okay. You know more about it than I do.
I'm getting
Anyone
an
else have
education
comments?
here. I had a comment. I mean, how did you get inspired by this particular topic? What drew you to it?
Well, all my work has to do with animals, and I was watching the new version of Cosmos, if you've seen the reboot with Neil deGrasse Tyson, and they mention these things like in 4 episodes, because they're so weird and cute and strange that they have to bring them up whenever possible. And I was really, especially because this project was a more public-facing project than I'm used to. Normally I'm doing things in museum spaces that are kind of removed. I felt like dealing with a topic that's a really easily popular animal and a really current popular, I mean, everybody who's watching it and talking about it, that it seemed like a really good subject matter for this project. So it kind of all came together.
And you found gummy bears as well.
Yeah.
To tie in with your reception. I thought that was cute.
Thanks for noticing the gummy bears.
Oh, yeah.
This is just kind of a flag for our own future work, that one of the great things about this project is how you put together multiple institutions into one here, and the use of Norden as a artist in residence, artist on display is something I'm sure a lot of other artists could do well in and hadn't thought of before, so hopefully they'll get the idea.
I'd love to see more of that.
Yeah, so maybe we can kind of think about how to help catalyze those things to happen, talking to the business owners about that as an opportunity and that sort of thing. Thanks, Maria.
Okay,
Yeah,
thanks.
thank you.
That topic did come up in the past because we had a lot of empty storefronts at Lincoln Square, and sometimes the owners had liability issues, and it prevented, but it hasn't stopped it, but it was a certain concern for some of the owners. But if we can get over that hurdle, I think there's lots of possibilities there.
Okay, next we're going to have the monthly progress report.
Okay. And actually, just one thing to add to
Oh,
that
sure.
discussion. I think before Christina left, she was working on possible residencies out at Allerton. So there might be a little bit of work that's already been done for that.
Interesting.
So monthly progress report with Urbana Arts Grants. With these last 2 presentations, most of the 2013 projects are being finished up. One project received an extension to fall of 2014, and I'm waiting on a couple final reports and one more presentation, and then 2013 is finished. And then we're going to be meeting with the grant subcommittee to go over survey results and then the process for 2015. Boneyard Creek Public Art, that's still going along swimmingly, and Jack Mackey's actually scheduled to be in town on July 23rd to do a final walkthrough of his part of the project. Regarding fundraising, I'll be participating in a conference call in about a week on technology and the evolution of giving, and the focus of the call will be crowdsourcing, and that's an avenue of fundraising that we've been slowly exploring since the time that I've been here. And we're also looking at citizeninvestor.org, which is one of the more governmental sites for crowdsourcing. marketing, I put a sample of the 2014 Summer Arts Class brochure on your chair, so that's been out and distributed, and pretty soon probably we're going to have to work on the fall.
Oh, I know.
So, and then Downtown Arts Subcommittee, we're working on sculpture placement for 2014-16 with the temporary sculptures, and then also Boneyard. And then Art at the Market, we have our third series of workshop and performances this Saturday with Aduki Jazz and T-shirt to tote bag workshop. And that'll be from 8 to noon for the workshop and 9:30 to 11:30 for the performance. And then just a quick upcoming event, like you don't know about it already, is Sweet Corn Festival is coming up August 22nd and 23rd.
Okay. And then you also wanted to talk about highlights of the conference you went to?
Yeah, just a quick overview. Let me do one thing here. Okay, so I just wanted to give you a quick overview of just some projects and discussions that we had at this conference that I went to, which was in Nashville, and I was there for about 5 days, which was a really long conference when you're in sessions for almost 8 hours a day, and then receptions and everything. But it's always invigorating and inspiring. Saw a lot of public art, had a lot of discussion. It was both a public arts conference and also an arts administrator conference for the entire country.
You saw Christina?
Mm-hmm.
Photo was?
Mm-hmm. Yep, I met Christina and we hung out and it was wonderful. So what I'll start with is a snapshot of some public art projects from around the country. And what this is a public art year in review. Basically, it's a juried competition that people submit entries to from all around the country, and a group of professional public art administrators jury these. And so from over 300, they picked 50, and I culled that even further from the ones that were interesting to me. So one that I found was just wonderful beyond belief was this project by Matthew Mazzata called Open House from York, Alabama. And in a snapshot, basically what it is there are lots of derelict buildings in this town, and they brought an artist in, the local arts council, to kind of figure out what the community wanted to do. And so the artist got the community out and talking, and they said, we don't really have a green space, or we don't have a community space for us. And so ultimately this was the project that the artist put together, is he took one of these derelict buildings, took all the materials off of it, kind of put it back together again as this house structure. But what it actually is it unfolds into a 100-seat theater, open house theater, that you can actually watch productions on and do musical concerts. And they created a tiny little park in this old house site. And so I have a quick video for you just to show you, because it really is wonderful to see. And very, very, very inventive, I thought.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Wow.
So I think he said it takes only about an hour for it to unfold. So that's that particular project.
Yes.
Mhm. And another public art project that I found very interesting because it kind of takes the definition of public art into some place that public art doesn't normally go is this Lexington Tattoo project from Lexington, Kentucky. And what it was, and a lot of the projects that I found myself being interested in were projects that deeply explored the place that these people were in. So the project brought together about 250 volunteers from around Lexington to be tattooed with phrases and words from a poem that poets created about Lexington, Kentucky. So it's both a very public and also very intimate project. It's both out there and then not at the same time. And then so you see some images of words from the poem.
Are they permanent tattoos or a henna type
No,
tattoo?
it's permanent.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I was just thinking of my new daughter-in-law who had that. She's has a background from Pakistan, and they did all this wonderful henna decorations on their hand, but it doesn't last. So I was just curious if it was a temporary tattoo or not.
No, it's permanent.
It's permanent.
Yeah. Then another project that was talked about was this Del Paso Words on Walls project, and this was in Sacramento, California. And what it was, again, there were poets that created poems about Sacramento, and there were 5 monumental public sculptures that were commissioned. And so there were 5 poets, 5 poems, 5 sites, and the poems themselves were turned into murals by graphic designers and then cited in the city. And it was, again, just this very evocative description of place and words. So one of the sessions was about stimulus projects in public art, and how do you measure the success of public art? In one way is audience engagement. One way that we do a lot here is quality of life, economic development, returning the public to a shared space and a communal space, creating these spaces that are welcoming to everyone. And public art, more than some other art forms, has this opportunity to tap into experience that draw us all together and to draw on our love of where we are in our place. So one project, which I actually saw last year when I was still in New York, was what was going on at Governor's Island. I don't know if you know much about Governor's Island, but it was a working military base in the middle of New York Harbor. It's only 800 yards away from Manhattan, so the ferry ride is 10 minutes, 5 minutes. I mean, you could swim there if you wanted to, I suppose. It's this tiny little jewel of a space, 172 acres of buildings and land and open space. Was owned by, or it's now owned by the city and the state of New York, and the trust was created to oversee the development of this space. And in the past 5 years or so, it's become this very great summer destination for relaxation and art and events. And one of the hurdles was how do you get people who have all this access to park space in New York City with Central Park and Prospect Park, how do you get them to kind of get over that hump of taking the ferry to get over to Governor's Island? Well, and I think their solution was to make the art and the place so attractive that you can't resist and make it a destination. So they have just all these different types of art events that explodes, again, what this idea of public art means. So they have free jazz dance-off contests, bike rentals, hammocks that you can sit in and just lay there the whole day, walking past food trucks. There's the historic site for the fort that's still there. And then the last, one of the last projects that I'll talk about is this idea of public art and locality. So I don't know if you've ever been to Fort Worth, Texas, but there is a very famous Alexander Calder sculpture called the Eagle that has been in Fort Worth, or was there, for almost 30 years. And in 2000, it was relocated. It was originally commissioned by a bank, and the bank had gone through owners and investors and everything over the years, and at one point, they didn't really want the sculpture anymore, the new group of investors, and so it got sold to the sculpture park in Seattle. And Fort Worth woke up one day and said, "Where's our sculpture? What happened to it?" So they were kind of pissed off. So what a local group of sculptors or artists did in 2014 was create this pop-up sculpture of the eagle. And so it alighted in different parts of Fort Worth over a week in February 2014, and it's basically an inflatable eagle, Calder Eagle. And I just thought that was a great way to kind of deal with a loss in your community and to celebrate what you had and didn't really know that you wanted until it was gone.
Appreciate it, yeah.
So just some issues that come up with public perception of public art, which I think we can draw on a lot here, is that people feel very positive towards the arts in general when you ask them, what do you think about the arts? But they probably also think that art is high art and possibly not for them, and there's also a little bit of entertainment. It's goods to be purchased, and it's a matter of personal taste and not public responsibility, and therefore it's superfluous. It's private, individual. And also people have this very passive relationship with art, and public art kind of feeds into that a little bit with the very kind of plop art sculpture aspect of what's going on. So one thing that kind of changes this discussion is positioning public art as a public good and having communal active interest, and that's why I drawn out these particular certain projects. And one last one that I'll touch on is this Ballroom Luminoso from San Antonio, Texas. And this is just very simple concept. Is basically these chandeliers made out of recycled bicycle parts that were installed in a freeway underpass locale in the middle of nowhere in San Antonio, kind of bridging two different neighborhoods. And they're lit by different colored LEDs. And so you have this really kind of grand structure of the underpass with the columns and the ballroom aspect lit by the beautiful patterns and the colors, and lo and behold, the community came together because of this particular piece of art. And you don't see it much in this, but it drew from the kind of history of the Latino community with the different forms there in the sculpture. So that is pretty much it for the conference. I just wanted to give you a quick overview of it.
Thanks a lot, Lisa. It's really great to see that overview. And one of the things that makes me think about that I'm eager to see us address in some way is how a few commissioned works can really spark imagination amongst the many other people that submit proposals to us, right? And even in the form of imitation, right? And so people's ideas about what public art are, also in the case of this kind of funding structure, can really have profound effects as well. Once people see that collective tattooing could be a public art project, we might get some different proposals in here, right? And I also think about that in light of the number of proposals we get for artworks, festivals, classes that use some of the same sites over and over again. And those suggest themselves to be sites where we could commission some really outstanding kinds of projects that would basically be, facilitating other projects, right? So I think we have a lot of work to do with all of our resources and time to try to just keep sparking people's imaginations in this way. I think especially in light of the great work the Public Art League has been doing to get more art in public. It's great work. It is a certain kind of artwork that we're seeing a lot all over town, and maybe a lot of people never having seen so much public art in this town as we've seen in the last 5 years because of the Public Art League, getting these temporary public works everywhere. But we may need to use that opportunity and new awareness as a time to commission some works that don't look as much like art. We now have that luxury.
So I had occasion a couple of weeks ago to spend about a few hours walking around the Pilsen neighborhood in Chicago and seeing, well, the murals are everywhere on every wall, and some of them are really lovely. And have we ever commissioned murals?
Well, actually, it had come up in connection with the Boneyard, but now the gentleman who owns the property has other ideas for it, so we're not going to be doing a mural. In other words, he had offered to do one, even suggested an artist. We were talking about doing it in cooperation with him, but now he's changed his mind and decides he wants to use their property for other purposes. So yes, we did think of doing a mural.
But there are so many places in town, and I would sort of reiterate what what Kevin said, if one or two were done, that might really inspire a number of people to do them. Now, I mean, of course, we don't actually solicit, well, we don't solicit proposals so much, but boy, that would be a wonderful thing to, I think would be a wonderful thing to somehow seed.
I mean, we have a variation of it with murals on glass. It's not the traditional mural type, but, you know, actually the structure of it is there. And I actually like that because it's using the mural idea in a different format, in a different medium. So,
You were going to say something. Well, I've had a passion for this idea brewing for a while. Every time I pull under the Krannert Center to go to a rehearsal or have a performance, I see all this empty wall of concrete and all these support beams, and I'm thinking every arts group in town could be posting their logo and painting things and making it really attractive underneath instead of just a parking lot and a sea of concrete. And I don't know if there's something like that that could be inspired, maybe not at Krannert, I don't know, but you know, a parking garage or something, some structure that you see every day and you sort of take for granted, but you go, oh, there's a blank canvas.
well, and there are spaces all across town. Like I drive through Cunningham Avenue every day, and I know we've been talking back and forth, and there's been plans created about Cunningham Avenue beautification, but corridors like that where they seem to be used for driving, you know, could be rife for just rethinking, you know, to make you look at those areas in a different way and make them possibly be more pedestrian friendly at some point.
Yeah.
So I think we need to muralize the city building.
Well, I think those are good ideas. I'm certainly not opposed to it, and I think we need to do more work on that. So maybe Lisa and I, we should talk a little bit about this and how we might maybe set up a subcommittee that wants to look at those things. So,
I think it's a good background for our conversation with the grants committee. as
oh,
well.
absolutely,
Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah. Well, and we'll be meeting this month, so, yeah. Okay, great.
Yep.
Okay, let's move to new business, which is the acquisition of Fanfare as part of the permanent collection of the city of Urbana. I think you've all read the memo that we have an opportunity to get this sculpture at a much reduced cost from the original price.
Do you want me to do any kind of overview or anything?
Sure,
before?
why don't you go ahead and do that,
Okay.
just for the viewers.
Most of you probably know Fanfare. It's on the corner of Elm and Race, right there by the Iron Post, and it's been there now since 2012. This all started because we're going through the kind of second round of renewals, and I was contacting the artist about renewing it for another 2 years, since it's a sculpture that's very well liked. It fits there very well. And he said, I'm actually dismantling my artistic practice and wanted to sell the sculpture to us at a very, very reduced price. Basically, the sculpture is worth $15,000, and he was going to offer it to us originally for $8,500. He now is offering it to us for $4,500, and we had already put $2,000 aside to be able to fund the lease of the sculpture. So, in essence, all we have to do was come up with another $2,500, and we could have the sculpture as part of the permanent collection of the city.
Okay, and the money for that extra money is coming from the TIF fund?
From the TIF encumbered fund.
Yeah, rather
So
than
it-
from our budget.
And it's not coming out of the budget that was just passed.
Okay.
So,
So, any comments, questions? You're good with it?
I think this idea of renting these pieces is such a good idea for 2,000. You know, exposes them to everybody,
Mm-hmm.
and it gives the artists, you know, not enough to make them, you know, and have them bronzed or whatever. I know that's a big problem. The beginning expense of making these is very difficult. And so the fact that they're willing to go along for $2,000 every 2 years, isn't it?
Yes.
Is amazing that they will do that, and I think we're very fortunate in Champaign-Urbana to have that policy, not only
Mhm.
Champaign, the Park District, and Urbana, the Park District, and town, that they all
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because we've had that long experience of seeing it there.
Mhm.
It's its home, it should be here.
Right. Okay. Well, if there's no more discussion, then would someone like to move that we approve the acquisition of Fanfare?
So moved.
Yes.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We are in favor. Now, I understand that it now has to go to the council for approval as well.
Yeah, I'll prepare a memo, a resolution for purchase. It'll go to committee, and then if it goes past that, then it'll go to council. So that it'll be end of July for the committee, and then if it goes further, then council early August, which is still within the artist timeframe, so that's good.
Great. Okay. Well, thanks. Okay, we have some announcements now. Do you want to talk about the third Art at the Market series?
I mentioned that already, but again, this
Sure.
Saturday, T-shirts to tote bags and a Dookie Jazz through the morning, 8 to noon, and then 9:30 to 11:30. And then just a couple 2014 Arts Grants projects that are coming up. We have the Rhizome of Ixo launch party, and that'll be July 19th at the IMC from 12 to 2, and this was the video game dealing with a Guatemalan dictator. And then the Amazon conference and performance will be July 23rd to 27th.
Right, and they also received a grant from us.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, and I would like to just mention briefly, Urbana artist Bonnie Switzer is going to have a collection of her paintings showing at the Ellis Campbell Alumni Center starting yesterday, July 7th, and it's going to be going to December 17th. So public can go in there and take a look at her work. Okay, any other comments? Okay, would someone like to move for adjournment?
Second.
We're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat.